Did you really think I'd get you that watch? Her voice sliced through the laughter like a blade. She held up a gift box with a grin too wide, too polished, and pulled out a plastic toy. A cartoon watch. Bright orange, with glittery eyes and a smiling face. Everyone burst into laughter. I didn't. I looked down at my hands, still trembling slightly from unwrapping the box seconds earlier. I hadn't even registered what was inside yet. I'd spent the last month hinting about the watch I loved, a simple, leather-banded one in a store she walked past daily. She leaned toward me. Come on, Lowell, don't pout. It's funny. Cameras flashed. I heard someone say, classic Ren. Someone else snorted. He looks like he's gonna cry. They were right. It was my birthday. There were candles still flickering on the cake behind me. Half the icing ruined where someone had dropped a champagne cork into it. And there I was, at the center of a living room packed with her friends, my coworkers, people I barely spoke to anymore, and a giant balloon shaped like a 4 beside a 0, which wasn't even my age. I was 38. Everything about the night felt off. The playlist was hers. The guest list was mostly hers. Even the speech she gave before the gift, full of inside jokes I didn't understand, was hers. I wasn't just ignored. I was background decoration at my own party. But the gift, that broke something open. She knew what I wanted. She had laughed with me about the childish fake watch trend on TikTok. And now she was handing one to me, in front of a room of people, as if that was her idea of celebration, of love, of us. I placed the watch back in the box, carefully, quietly. My hands were sweating. My heart was racing. The room blurred around the edges. That's when she wrapped her arms around my neck in front of everyone and whispered in my ear, soft enough that no one else could hear it, but heavy enough to slam into my ribs like a shovel. Lighten up, babe. I love you, okay? I couldn't move. Love? Was that love? Because it didn't feel like it. It felt like I was being laughed at, like I was being tested, like she needed to prove something to someone. Maybe to him, the tall guy in the back near the bookshelf, the one she kept locking eyes with during the night. I didn't know his name. I didn't even know when he arrived. But he was the only one not laughing. He was just staring at her. After everyone left, I didn't say anything. I just started collecting the trash, the cups, the plates, the leftover streamers, and the shreds of wrapping paper. She was already on the couch, phone in hand, texting. Her face glowed from the screen's light. No smile. No thanks. Just silence and typing. And then her phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. I only saw 2 words flash on the screen before she locked it. He noticed, and my stomach dropped. Because I did. And I hadn't said a word yet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling while her breathing stayed soft and steady, like none of it happened. Like she hadn't humiliated me in front of a room full of people, hadn't whispered something that sounded more like control than love, hadn't gotten a suspicious message from someone that made my gut twist into a knot I couldn't untangle. My mind kept circling those 2 words like they were some kind of code. He noticed? What was I supposed to notice? Was I being paranoid? Was I supposed to pretend everything was fine just because she said, I love you, while stepping on my dignity? I started going over the night again in my head. Who was that guy by the bookshelf? Why did he look like he was watching her instead of the rest of the room? And why did she keep looking back at him with that half smirk? I didn't know his name. I didn't invite him. He wasn't on our friends list, and he sure as hell wasn't from my side of anything. Around 3 a.m., I got out of bed quietly and went downstairs. The decorations were still up. Half-deflated balloons sagged from the ceiling, confetti stuck to the furniture, and that plastic joke watch sat on the kitchen counter like it was daring me to laugh. I didn't. I just stood there, staring at it. I couldn't shake the feeling that the gift wasn't random, that it was carefully chosen to humiliate me in a way only she and someone else understood. Eventually, I opened her laptop. I know how that sounds, but something was eating at me. I needed answers. I wasn't looking for dirt. I was looking for sanity. I wanted to find something that would prove I was just overthinking it, that it was just a dumb party and I was being overly sensitive. Instead, I found a hidden folder on her desktop titled Lemons. I clicked. There were pictures. Lots of them. But not of us. None of me. Just her. Selfies in different outfits. Some in front of our mirror. Some taken outside. All with angles and expressions that I hadn't seen in years. Ones she used to save for me when we were still in love. Now they were tucked away in a folder named after a fruit she hates. One photo caught my eye. She was wearing the exact same dress she wore at the party. And standing behind her, just barely visible in the mirror's edge, was the guy from the bookshelf. I zoomed in. His arm was around her waist. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I closed the laptop and nearly knocked over a glass. The sound echoed through the kitchen. Upstairs, I heard her stir. I bolted to the couch and sat down, pretending to be asleep before she got downstairs. But she never came down. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Made coffee. Scrolled her phone. Even asked me, cheerfully, if I had fun at the party. I gave her a flat smile and said, "Yeah, tons." She didn't even blink. That's when it hit me. The real punch wasn't the plastic watch or the toast or the crowd. It was this, the way she could walk through the aftermath like the building wasn't still on fire. Like my pain didn't even register. Later that day, I tried to casually ask, "Hey, who was that tall guy near the bookshelves? I don't think I've met him before." She paused, just for a split second, then said, "Oh, that's just Ezra. He's from yoga." Ezra. I'd never heard the name before. Never seen him in our neighborhood. Never once heard her mention him in any of our conversations. But apparently now he was just from yoga. I nodded and let it go. But something inside me started to unravel. That night, I started planning what I was going to do next, and it wasn't what she thought. Because she kept playing it cool. But I wasn't going to sit around and wait to be laughed at again. Something inside me cracked open. And I wasn't going to be the punchline anymore. I spent the next 3 days pretending. Smiling when I had to, responding with grunts when it felt safe, and nodding my way through every bland conversation ran through my way, which, to be honest, wasn't much. She mostly stayed on her phone, always face down when I entered the room, always with that slight delay before she looked up. She hadn't asked how I felt about the party. Not once. She hadn't mentioned the watch again, either. In her world, everything was fine. In mine, I felt like I was living with a stranger wearing my wife's skin. But the longer I kept quiet, the more I saw. Ezra. That name stayed with me like a splinter under the nail. It itched at me. Burned. I searched through her social media accounts, but he was nowhere. Not tagged. Not followed. Not liked. Which only made it worse. It meant they were being careful. Secretive. He didn't exist in her public life, only in shadows. And shadows meant she had something to lose. I needed proof, but I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I couldn't just explode. She was too good at turning things around. Ren had this way of making you feel like your confusion was your own fault. I'd call her out, and she'd somehow leave me apologizing by the end of it. So I waited. And I watched. On Thursday night, she went out again. Yoga, she claimed. Hot yoga, don't wait up. I nodded. Kissed her on the cheek. She flinched slightly, just barely, and I pretended I didn't notice. The moment the front door closed, I went upstairs and opened the folder again. Lemons. It was bothering me. Something about it didn't feel like a one-off. I had only skimmed it the first night, but now, I went deeper. Inside the main folder were subfolders, labeled things like fun, why, late, and one simply marked with the date of my birthday. That last one made my stomach drop. I clicked. The first video file started playing automatically. And there she was, Rin, in the same dress from the party, only this time she wasn't in our house. She was in a car, in the passenger seat, laughing. Her head leaned against someone's shoulder. The camera tilted, showing part of a jawline, the hint of a man's cheek. Ezra. Then she looked into the camera and said something I will never forget. He's going to be so surprised. The way she said it wasn't sweet. It wasn't affectionate. It was cruel. Mocking. Like I was a child and they were in on the joke. The video cut off. I closed the laptop like it had burned me. I sat there in the dark, gripping the arms of the chair so hard my knuckles turned white. And for the first time since the party, I didn't feel sad. I felt cold. Numb. But it got worse. A few minutes later, Rin came home. I hadn't even realized how much time had passed. I scrambled to shut off the computer, rushed downstairs, and poured myself a glass of water to look casual. She breezed in, sweaty and glowing, tossed her bag on the table, and said, "Yoga was brutal tonight." I turned to her, deadpan. "Hot?" She laughed. "Yeah, extra hot." And I just stood there, nodding like a fool, water glass in hand, pretending I hadn't just seen her on camera in someone else's car, wearing my humiliation like perfume. She kissed me on the cheek again. This time, I flinched. But she didn't notice. Later that night, she fell asleep beside me like nothing was wrong. Her breathing slow, calm, like she was floating through dreams while I lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling, a silent scream building behind my teeth. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. Because I needed more. And something told me. My birthday wasn't the first time she played me like this. The next morning, I sat across from her at breakfast, stirring a bowl of oatmeal I had no intention of eating. Ren scrolled through her phone, sipped her coffee, and occasionally muttered something about work emails or how her friend Camilla was going through it again. I just nodded, like a prop husband. The kind you find in sitcoms, predictable, silent, tragically inoffensive. That's what I had become. I didn't recognize myself anymore. But I didn't push her. Not yet. I needed her to feel safe. I needed her to think I was still the clueless fool she could manipulate. That I hadn't seen the video. That I hadn't found the folder. That I wasn't building a case in silence. I was. Later that day, when she left for the office, I skipped work. I called in sick, something I almost never do. My boss, Miles, sounded weirdly concerned. I told him I just needed to rest. Truthfully, I was too angry, too wired, too full of questions I couldn't ask aloud. I waited 30 minutes after she left, then I unlocked her desktop again. I opened the Lemons folder and clicked into the subfolder labeled Y. I hadn't touched it before, because honestly, it scared me. I thought maybe Y stood for yoga. But when I opened it, I realized it didn't. Or maybe it did, in the sickest possible way. There were screenshots of messages. Hundreds of them. Most were cropped tightly, no names, no timestamps, just snippets of conversations. Flirty ones. Sexual ones. Mean ones. Some of them were about me. One of them read, "He still wears that stupid robe. I swear he thinks it's a personality." Another, "If I didn't fake laugh, he'd think I was mad." But the one that really stuck out was short. Just 2 lines. Her, "He asked about you. Unknown sender. Did he notice something?" I scrolled faster, my pulse pounding. Some screenshots were blurry. Some were obviously cropped to hide identities. But the tone was always the same, her speaking like she was somewhere else, someone else, like I was just an obligation she dragged around. A burden she decorated for birthdays and posed with in public. The man she married felt like a version of me she no longer respected. I clicked back, needing air. And that's when I saw something I hadn't noticed before, another subfolder, almost hidden in the bottom corner of the screen. It was called Echo. It was password protected. That rattled me more than anything. Because Rin wasn't the type to password protect things. Her password for everything for years had been some variation of our wedding date. Even the main folder wasn't locked. But this one? It was deliberate. Secret. Buried under layers of deception. I tried a few guesses. Our anniversary, her birthday, my birthday. Nothing worked. I slammed the laptop shut. This wasn't just cheating. This wasn't just emotional distance. This was planning. This was a woman actively curating a private world I was never supposed to see. And worst of all, I think Ezra, whoever he really was, wasn't the only one in it. I started retracing everything. The weird phone calls last month when she'd walk into the hallway to talk in whispers. The time she said she was visiting her aunt overnight but came home smelling like sandalwood and tequila. The way she always forgot her phone on silent at dinner. I'd brushed it all off, convincing myself she just needed space. Now I was convinced she needed exposure. That evening, when she got home, I was already showered, calm, dressed, and cooking dinner. I even played our old playlist, songs we used to dance to in the kitchen back when she still smiled with her eyes. She paused in the doorway and gave me this look like I'd done something suspicious. "Wow," she said. "This is unexpected. I figured you could use a break," I replied. "Rough week?" She nodded slowly and opened a bottle of wine. I watched her carefully. She looked comfortable, but her fingers were tied around the glass. When she sat down, I served her plate first. It was almost like old times, except I had memorized every lie by now. We made it through half the meal before she spoke again. "Are you okay, Lowell? You've been quiet lately." I smiled. "Just thinking." "About what?" And I looked at her for a long second. Her eyes searched mine. Like she already knew. Like she was trying to read what I discovered. But I said, "About how much I appreciate you." And just like that, she exhaled. She smiled. She leaned across the table and took my hand. And I knew in that exact moment, this woman didn't love me anymore. She just didn't want to lose control. But she already had. I don't know what it was about that dinner. Maybe it was the wine, or the music, or the way she finally let herself relax in front of me again. But there was this strange moment toward the end of it, when the plates were scraped clean, the candles were burning low, and the last notes of a love song drifted through the speakers, where she looked at me like she almost meant it. Like the Ren I married had resurfaced. She touched my face, gently, and said, "You're a good man, Lowell." Not, "I love you." Not, "Thank you." Just that. Like she was closing a chapter in her head before I even realized we were in the final pages. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. I should have recorded it, framed it, bottled it, because everything that came after shattered whatever illusion I'd been preserving. The next day, I made a choice. A stupid one, maybe, but I had to know. I called in another sick day, second time in 1 week, which made me nervous. But I didn't care. Rin had an early morning yoga class, and I had memorized the time she left. I waited 5 minutes after the door clicked shut, then grabbed her spare keys and followed her. I know how that sounds. It felt insane. I felt insane, but I couldn't shake that locked folder. Echo. What was she hiding that needed that level of secrecy? What version of her existed in that digital vault? I needed more than screenshots and whispers. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. I kept my distance. She parked near a small studio in an unfamiliar part of town. I waited. I watched. She went inside. I expected her to reappear in workout gear, to stretch, to join a group like normal people do in yoga. But 30 minutes passed, then 40. No movement. No classes coming in or out. No signage on the door. Just a nondescript glass front and a fake potted plant beside it. That's when I saw him. Ezra. He pulled up in a matte black car I'd never seen before. The kind of car people buy when they want you to know they have money but don't want to say it out loud. He stepped out, looked around, and entered the same building without knocking. I waited 5 more minutes, hard in my throat. Then I got out of the car. I walked to the front of the studio. I wasn't even sure what I was going to do. Burst in? Pretend I was lost? The moment I touched the door, though, I heard voices, faint, distant, echoing from a hallway or another room. Then laughter. Her laughter. That same sharp, mean-spirited sound from the birthday party. The one that made me feel like an afterthought. And then something even worse. I heard her say my name. I froze. I leaned closer, careful not to be seen. Her voice was clearer now, coming through the thin walls. She was talking fast, like she was excited or nervous. "Lowell still thinks I'm going to yoga," she said. "He made dinner last night. Even lit candles. It was kind of sad." Ezra laughed. "Still no clue." "No," she said, dragging out the word like it disgusted her. "I don't think he could handle it if he knew everything. I think it'd crush him." There was a pause. Then the unmistakable sound of a kiss. I backed away, slowly, carefully. My hands were trembling. My vision blurred. I turned, walked back to my car in a daze, and sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes before I realized I hadn't even put the key in the ignition. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to crash my fists into the steering wheel until something broke. Instead, I drove home. Quietly. Like a ghost. And when Rin returned that afternoon, she kissed me on the forehead and said, "I'm thinking we should get away for the weekend. Just us. What do you think?" I nodded, because I needed to figure out what she meant by everything. And if she thought she had the upper hand, she hadn't seen what I found next. The worst thing about betrayal isn't the lies. It's not the hiding. It's not even the third-party invader, the Ezra standing smug in some hallway pretending like he belongs in your life. The worst part is the performance. The charade. The way they smile at you with clean eyes, serve you soup like they still care, and ask if you slept well, knowing they spent the night curled into someone else's arms. That kind of duplicity, it gets into your bones. After that afternoon, after hearing my name spoken like a joke, I didn't sleep. Not a wink. I laid on the couch that night with a pillow over my head, pretending to be too hot to share the bed. She didn't push. In fact, she acted relieved. That stung more than I expected. She left her laptop out again the next morning. Careless. Or confident. Either way, I knew I had maybe one chance before she got too careful again. The folder was still there. Echo. Still locked. I stared at the password box, breathing shallow, feeling like I was cracking into something not just private, but radioactive. The folder name didn't make sense to me. Why Echo? Why not something neutral, something like work or taxes? But the more I stared at it, the more it made a terrible kind of sense. Echo. As in, what repeats? What reverberates? What never fully disappears? I thought back to something Ren once said, years ago, in one of the few arguments we ever had before things fell apart. She told me, "I don't forget pain. It echoes. It shapes everything." At the time, I thought it was poetic. Now it felt like a threat written in code. And then I tried the password, shatter_23. I don't know why I chose it. Just a guess, shatter was something she used in that same fight. You can't just shatter someone and expect them to be whole again, she had snapped once. And 23. Well, that was the year everything started breaking. It worked. The folder opened. Inside were voice memos. Dozens of them. Not emails, not texts, just voice clips. Almost like she had been recording her own thoughts. Or maybe someone else had been sending them to her. My stomach turned as I clicked the first file. It was her voice. Whispered, soft, breathy. He's watching me again. I can feel it. Every move I make now, I wonder if he's piecing it together. I hate this part. The guilt always ruins it. I sat back in the chair, stunned. It was like finding a diary written in code, hidden in plain sight. I clicked the next one. I told Ezra I'd give him a decision after the trip. If it feels right. If Lowell keeps pretending not to see the signs, maybe that's the answer. Next. His eyes don't even light up anymore. He used to get excited when I walked into a room. Now it's like I'm just passing through his field of vision. Sometimes I wonder if he's the one who left already, and I'm the one still clinging to an illusion. She kept going. He made dinner last night. Candles and all. I almost cried. Then I remembered how many times I begged him to look at me like that before Ezra. And now he does it when it's too late. And another. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of smiling at him and hating myself for it. I'm tired of holding back when I want to scream. I don't even know if I want to leave or if I want him to. I listened to 26 files. And by the end, I didn't even feel angry. Just hollow. She had been bleeding this out of her for months. Quietly. Recording her slow, spiraling grief like a catalog of her own emotional death. It wasn't just about Ezra. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about rot. Decay. The kind you don't notice until your house collapses. But one thing she said, one line from memo number 19, kept looping in my head like a siren. If I go through with it, I want to tell him in a way he'll remember forever. I want him to know I loved him once. And I want him to feel the moment I stopped. That did something to me. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or pack a bag and disappear into the night. But one thing was clear. The weekend trip she planned wasn't just a getaway. It was an execution. I packed a bag like she asked. A small one. No cologne, no razor. Just a few shirts, jeans, and a hoodie that still smelled faintly like our dog before he died last winter. She loved that dog. She cried harder for him than I've ever seen her cry for anything related to me. That should have told me something back then. Ren was giddy that morning. Not obnoxiously so, but in that practiced, subtle way that makes your skin itch. She wore a soft gray sweater, the kind she usually saved for days she wanted to be cuddled. She hummed while she packed snacks for the road, tossed me a bottle of water, smiled like we were 25 again, and about to drive cross-country to find ourselves. But I already knew who I was. The man she was leaving behind. We took her car. She always preferred to drive, and I was in no mood to argue. I sat quietly, watching trees blur past the windows, wondering if this was what death row felt like. The slow ride toward the final moment, watching everything go by with a strange, peaceful clarity. The music she played was soft and familiar. Songs we used to dance to. She didn't say much for the first hour. Neither did I. But somewhere between exits and silence, I started seeing her differently. Like I was no longer part of this marriage, but merely observing its last chapter. Her posture was relaxed, her fingers drumming gently against the steering wheel. I studied her smile when she sang along to the chorus of a song we once called ours. It wasn't forced. It wasn't fake. It was free. She had already detached from me. She wasn't thinking about what I was feeling. She was thinking about what she was about to do. We stopped at a gas station in a tiny town off the highway. She told me to grab us something sweet. A treat, she called it, while she went to use the bathroom. I went inside the store, picked up a pack of cookies, then waited by the windows and watched her. She wasn't in the bathroom. She was behind the building, talking on the phone. Even from a distance, I could see the change in her. She was animated. Her hands moved with energy. Her face lit up in a way it hadn't around me in years. And then she smiled. A real smile. Not the small, polite kind she gave me at breakfast. This one had warmth. Spark. The kind of smile people save for someone who makes them feel alive again. She saw me watching her and stiffened instantly. Pulled the phone away and mouthed something like 1 SEC to whoever was on the other end. She walked back toward me quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear and saying, "Sorry, just Camilla again. Drama as always." I nodded, and I smiled back, because the moment had arrived. We arrived at the cabin just before dusk. It was one of those rental places with a perfect fake charm: log walls, checkered curtains, a fake bear rug by the fire. She called it cozy. I called it temporary. We unpacked in silence. She poured wine. We sat by the fire, and I let her talk about nothing for nearly half an hour. Weather, the trees, her co-worker's failed promotion. Then I asked her, very softly, "Do you think we're happy?" She paused mid-sip. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you think we're still us? Or are we just pretending?" She set the glass down slowly and gave me a cautious look. "Lowell, what are you really asking?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the flames and let her fill the silence. "And, right on cue, she did. I think we've been off for a while. I think we've both been tired. I don't know, maybe we've drifted. But that's why I wanted this weekend. To see if there's something left to fix." "You didn't plan this to fix anything," I said, keeping my voice calm. "You planned this to end it." She blinked. "What?" "I heard you, Ren. At the studio. I know you've been seeing him. I saw the folder. The messages. The recordings. All of it." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. But nothing came out. "I know about Ezra," I continued. "I know what this trip is. I know you were going to tell me. Maybe after wine. Maybe after one last night where we play pretend. But it doesn't matter anymore." She stood up slowly, her breathing shallow. "Lowell, it's not what you think. It never is it?" I stood too. Calm. Steady. My hands weren't even shaking. "You didn't want to hurt me, right? That's what you told him? That's what you told yourself? That I was fragile. That I couldn't handle the truth. That you didn't want me to break. But here's the thing, Ren." I walked to the bag I had brought, pulled out a small envelope. "I'm not breaking." I tossed it onto the table between us. She stared at it like it was ticking. "What is that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Something you'll read after I'm gone." She moved closer. "Wait, gone where?" "I rented a second cabin. Not far. I'll be staying there tonight. Tomorrow, you'll drive back alone. You'll tell whoever's waiting for you that it's over. That you did it. That I know. And that I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked away." She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stared at me, frozen in place. And then I said, very gently, "You wanted me to remember the moment you stopped loving me. I want you to remember this moment too." I walked out the front door, and I didn't look back. The cabin I rented was smaller, simpler. No fireplace, no fake bear rug, no curated charm. Just a bed, a table, a kettle, and 4 quiet walls. When I closed the door behind me that night, I stood there for a long time, in complete silence, letting the weight of everything settle. There were no echoes of her voice here, no memories clinging to the furniture, just me and the steady beat of my own breath. It was the first time in years I felt still. I made tea, didn't bother with my phone, didn't scroll through messages or stalk her social media or check for any last-minute apology texts. There weren't any. I just sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the wind press against the window like it was urging me to breathe again. Sleep came easier than I expected. It wasn't restful, but it was clean. No nightmares. No dreams, even. Just quiet. In the morning, I packed my things. The envelope I had given her was still on my mind. Inside it was a letter, not full of rage, not full of guilt-tripping. Just truth. My truth. A note explaining that I had seen everything, heard everything. And instead of burning the bridge between us, I chose to step off it gently. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I just wanted to stop bleeding in silence. By the time I returned home 2 days later, Ren was gone. She had taken her things, most of them, anyway. A few of her plants still sat in the corner, as if they'd forgotten to follow her out the door. The bed was made. A single note sat on the kitchen counter. 5 words, written in her unmistakable handwriting. "I'm sorry. You deserved better." No signature. No plea. No manipulation. Just honesty, maybe for the first time in years. And I didn't cry. I made coffee. Sat at the window. Watched the street. I noticed how blue the sky was that morning. How crisp the air felt when I opened the window and let it roll through the kitchen. I thought about the way I used to dread mornings. Now they felt wide open. The next few weeks were hard. I won't lie. I had to explain things to friends, family, even co-workers who assumed we were fine. I had to pack up years of shared memories, delete photos, take her name off accounts. But each step, each document filed, each drawer cleaned, felt like lifting a stone off my chest. And then one day, I found myself laughing at something on TV. Genuinely laughing. Alone but whole. And that's when it hit me. I hadn't lost myself in the wreckage. I had just finally stepped out of the rubble. I started running in the mornings. Signed up for a pottery class, of all things. I reconnected with my brother in Oregon, someone I hadn't talked to in 4 years over a stupid argument. We talked for hours. I started sleeping better. My appetite returned. My spine straightened. My silence stopped sounding like punishment and started feeling like peace. Ren never reached out again. I don't know where she is now. I hope, in some strange way, she found whatever it was she thought Ezra could give her. Maybe it worked out. Maybe it didn't. But that part isn't mine to carry anymore. And me? I'm okay. Actually, more than okay. Because sometimes the cruelest goodbyes are the ones that set you free.